Is there a moment of your career that you wish you could do over?
You know, Yasmin, no.
That's probably because he can't remember anything at this point. I don't know. We just got our hands on the 359-page transcript of Fauci's 7-hour-long depo with the attorneys general of Missouri and Louisiana. Now, during that deposition, he said, I don't recall 174 times when he was asked about his own emails. Now, that doesn't even include all the times he said, I can't recall, and I don't remember. That's even a lot more. Now, remember, the one thing he does remember is sending Dr. Clifford Lane, one of his deputies, on a WHO delegation to China in February of 2020 to see how they were handling COVID. And boy, were they amazed. Dr. Lane was very impressed about how the Chinese were handling the isolation, the contact tracing, and the building of facilities to take care of the people. He also said that Lane reported back from the trip that China learned lessons about controlling the virus that they wanted to share with us. Fauci was on the Angle at the exact same time the WHO delegation was over there getting information from their Chinese pals. So you're satisfied with all of the transparency coming out of China today about the trajectory of the disease and the origin of the disease?
Laura, I cannot say that I am satisfied with every single bit of information, but I can tell you that I can believe what they're telling me.
You know, that was something else he couldn't recall, whether or not he spoke about the origins of the virus in February 2020. Well, we've played that clip, I don't know how many times on The Angle. So I hope he's watching now. Maybe it'll jog his memory. Joining me now is Ben Domenech, Fox News contributor and editor-at-large at The Spectator, and Victor Davis Hanson, senior fellow at the Hoover Institution. Ben, I had him on The Angle, I think twice. Mm-hmm. Shocking he didn't come back on again. But the China question, I don't know why I felt like I had to ask that in February, but it was revealing.
Well, it was prescient. I mean, look, I think, Laura, after looking at that interview, clearly the science has spoken and Anthony Fauci is perfect. So we just have to accept that. To deny it would be engaging in dangerous misinformation about the level of service that he has offered us as a country. No, Dr. Fauci, of course, has denied at every stage any kind of responsibility for decisions that he was repeatedly a critical actor in making. And I think that, all of the hullabaloo around him, all of the propaganda that we saw from the left, propping him up even as so many questions were being lodged by legitimate sources, Americans who were just raising, I think, very serious and what it turned out to be significant questions about the level that we could trust what China was saying, the level of confidence that we had in the conclusions that were in so many ways affecting our lives. It's really disturbing to look at someone, a bureaucrat, an unelected person, not someone responsible to, or responsive to any kind of voter, have that kind of power over our lives, and now at this point have complete ability to deny any responsibility that he had for the decisions that he made.
He doesn't want any do-overs on anything. Wow. Fauci was also asked about a February 2020 phone call he had with his deputy at the NIH. Now, the subject of the call was the specifics about the NIH's ties to the EcoHealth Alliance. Remember, that's Peter Daszak's group. Fauci said, I wanted to be briefed on the scope of what our collaborations were and the kind of work that we were funding in China. I wanted to know what the nature of that work was. I didn't like the fact that I was completely in the dark about the totality of the work that were being done. Victor, we've been asking the NIH about this phone call for over a year and had heard nothing. Are we to believe that Tony Fauci knew nothing about the nature of that gain-of-function research that was being done at the behest of the EcoHealth Alliance with a grant from the NIH in Wuhan?
I think even his redacted emails show that that's not true, that he knew all about it. And I think the paranoia that he had in insisting to almost the present day that this virus originated in the wild shows that. And we have now all these articles by former New York Times science writer Nicholas Wade, Peter Quay's book, the latest one by Dr. Huff. And the consensus he knows now is that it's very likely that this virus originated in Wuhan. But I think part of our problem, Laura, is that it's so huge. It's staggering, the truth. It's existential in the sense that, did the United States give money through the NIH and Dr. Fauci's institute at the National Institute of Allergies and Infectious Diseases and route it through Echo Health to avoid that it was not legal in the United States? And that money ended up in Wuhan under the control of the People's Liberation Army and had some role in contributing to this virus that's infected 800 million people, probably double that if we had the accurate figures, and killed over 70 million. That's such a staggering thing to even comprehend that we don't know what to do with it. And I think that he's a deer in the headlights figure now. He's becoming a James Comey with 245 times Comey couldn't remember. It's the same trajectory that these people are just unwinding before our eyes because their culpability is so enormous that we can't even comprehend that anybody with that responsibility would be so reckless.
Well, they have to be held accountable.
And he knows he knows it.
Ben, during his deposition, he was asked if he knew anybody who works in social media. After demurring for a number of responses, he revealed that his daughter used to work as a software engineer at Twitter. Well, they take care of their own, and it's all kind of intertwined. And Twitter's where all that disinformation was. They were banning people, shadow banning them.
I mean, as a conspiracy theory, this wouldn't even work on a TV show. But look, whether she had anything to do with that or not, I think that certainly we have to question the amount and the roles that Dr. Fauci had in every case when it comes to affecting the way that social media shifted and charged this debate in ways that we are only just now learning about for the first time as Elon Musk has started to unspool these things before our eyes.
Yeah, on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the most important, that's how important it is to hold these people accountable. Gentlemen, thank you.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.